Of the early pioneers of Romanticism, William Blake is one of the more interesting characters. A Londoner, pretty much his entire life. He is a wild, creative soul who felt very deeply that uh, mankind had lost its way through the Enlightenment, that rationalism and thought and a distant God, a distant objectified experience of religion and worship were all antithetical to what he felt the human soul really needed. And so he sets about through his poetry and later on through his engraving and his painting, and he's a remarkable visual artist as well. Through his poetry to redirect human attention to what he felt really mattered. And you see this in his early short poems very acutely, which really signaled the new direction that culture was taking as the Enlightenment was waning and Romanticism was on the rise. This swing away from rationalism and into a celebration of emotion and mysticism and spiritualism and inspiration. Some of his most popular work, he's Mensa popular during his lifetime, but some of his most popular work today is the collection that he put together, Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience, two categories into which he wrote very short lyrics, and they are often they're generally meant to be read in pairs, in matches, so that as you read Songs of Innocence, you get the perspective of something through the eyes of a child, and that childlike wonder, and children are very important to the Romantics. But then you get through these Songs of Experience the perspective of the older person. Somebody who is looking at perhaps the exact same issue, the same problem, the same whatever, but doing so from a perspective of experience, of having lived some life, of no longer being a child. Because of this mismatched or of this matched way that Blake clearly intended his work to be read, he can be hard to get a hold of, because especially when you're dealing with just, one poem here, one poem there, maybe an excerpt in an anthology or something like that, it can be hard to really get the full effect of what he's going for. So you get very simple short poems in the Songs of Innocence that are really very sweet and very touching, and you see little snippets of them on embroidered pillows all over the English-speaking world. But these Songs of Experience that are meant to be the counterpoint to that are often somewhat overlooked. So there is that little fault line running through his work that makes it very difficult to get a hold of. He's not, for all of his simplicity, and he does try and write, and he declared himself as somebody who wrote for children largely. Eschewing the kind of complications and sophistications that he saw drying out the husk of culture during the Enlightenment years. For all of that, he can be very hard to get a hold of. But the best way is to just, with everything, to just kind of dive in and see what you can make. He is unambiguous in signaling a change from the Enlightenment age, that the sophistication, the civilization, the high culture wit of the Enlightenment giants had led to a dead end for him. He saw nothing there of any great value. And so he tried from the very beginning to break off from that and say, okay, no, we're going to go in a different direction. So if all you Enlightenment guys are trying to be very dry and witty and write to an educated elitist audience, he is going to go the other direction. He's going to write largely in his mind for children. He's going to use very simple terms. He's going to make it appealing in form and content to a much broader audience, one that doesn't have to be quite so educated, quite so elitist, quite so refined. The Romanticism is coming out of something much more primitive and primal that the cultured aesthetes of the Enlightenment age had seemingly lost their way in the view of Blake and others. So anyway, from the very beginning, the introduction to Songs of Innocence is really quite remarkable for the way it declares itself different and a new path. Piping down the valleys wild, piping songs of pleasant glee. On a cloud I saw a child, and he left, and he laughing said to me, pipe a song about a lamb, so I piped in merry cheer. Piper, pipe that song again, so I piped, he wept to hear. Drop thy pipe, thy happy pipe, sing thy songs of happy cheer. So I sung the same again, while he wept with joy to hear. Piper, sit thee down and write in a book that all may read. So he vanished from my sight, and I plucked a hollow reed. I made a rural pen, and I stained the water clear, and I wrote my happy songs every child may joy to hear. Couple of things just jump out you right away without even addressing what any of the words are. The rhythm of it, the short lines, the bouncy meter, the simple rhyme scheme, very, very simple rhyme scheme, is childlike. It's a song. It's appealing on that level. This is something that he is reaching back to an older age of poetry that was almost pre-literate, the oral tradition, where he's trying to make it something so accessible that you don't even need to have to read. You don't even have to know how to read to appreciate this. It appeals on that level. And it appeals to people who are perhaps less sophisticated. It appeals to people who maybe have no patience for long poems about abstract intellectual topics. This is very, very simple, and he is appealing to this to try and signal that poetry is democratic, poetry is populist, poetry is supposed to be inspiring. There is a sense of wonder in this. There's a sense of very simple joy in this. It calls out specifically to children, and the child is begging him to go through the stages of composition. This is almost a command from a Greek goddess in a previous iteration of civilization. He's saying, pipe a song, then sing the song, and then write it, going through the stages, suggesting, emphasizing that link between the stages, between the song, between the music, between the words of a song and the written down words on the page. That's all supposed to be a coherent whole that he wants to get back to. Blake does, and the way he puts it also at the very end, where he draws himself up as, okay, this is my mission. I plucked a hollow reed, not a sophisticated pen, not a fountain pen, nothing particularly elegant. He's not at an ornate writing desk. I plucked a hollow reed connected to nature, and made a rural pen, rural, driving that home. That's like, this is not sophisticated. I'm not sitting there in the guest house of Frederick the Great of Prussia. I'm just a common, ordinary guy singing a song. This is a little bit of a throwback also to the notion of the pastoral tradition of shepherds who write and sing and produce art. You get a sense of the simplicity, the rough-hewn nature of this. And I stained the water clear. I wrote my happy songs. Every child may joy to hear. Every child. You can talk about, well, children of all ages, perhaps, but also specifically every child, not just the children, perhaps even of the wealthy, but every child. This is a democratic approach. It is it's a clarion call right at the beginning to say that this is a different poetry. This is not Alexander Pope. We are not going to be going down that road. He's a signal. The Lamb, one of his most famous, again, very gentle. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Give thee life and bid thee feed by the stream and o'er the mead. Gave thee clothing of delight, softest clothing, woolly bright. Gave thee such a tender voice, making all the vales rejoice. Little lamb, who made thee? Little dost thou know who made thee? Very simple, again, almost, like baby talk. Very simple, bouncy little, but subtle rhyme and meter. Repetitive, but in a way it is baby talk. It is the way adults would talk to children, perhaps. Little lamb, I'll tell thee, little lamb, I'll tell thee, he is called by thy name, for he calls himself a lamb. He is meek and he is mild. He became a little child, I a child, and thou a lamb. We are called by his name. Little lamb, God bless thee. Little lamb, God bless thee. Now, obviously, here we get into, it is clearly the analogy is Christ. You get a sense of the wonder of the miracle of Christ child, and that sense of belonging and hopefulness that comes from that. It's the lamb is very real to the child, and so through that, the figure of Christ, the spiritual value of the religion of Christianity, is made more real, is made more tangible. Talking about, the wool of the and the first stanza. It's very real. It's very easy to grasp, literally and figuratively, imaginatively and physically. It's charming in its way, and it touches on Blake's concern with and idiosyncrasies about religion, spirituality, the practice of religion as opposed to the experience of spirituality. But he is laying down a marker there and saying, all right, this is important. And you see a little bit more of this in Holy Thursday, in Songs of Innocence. 'Twas a Holy Thursday, their innocent faces clean, the children walking two and two in red and blue and green. And he paints this picture of young children all dressed up in their various school uniforms were being led into St. Paul's Church. And he sees this as just the vision here is of a beautiful experience of all the children coming together, and they're going to sing and experience something wonderful, which is significant. It's a very nice little it's a very nice little notion. There are hints in here that, that there are problems with this, that there's perhaps a snake in the Garden of Eden. When they talk about the aged men, beneath them sit the aged when, wise guardians of the poor, then cherish pity lest you drive an angel from their door. There's a sense of a lingering threat in there. The aged men as opposed to the beautiful young children. And it ends on that note, so it's a little bit disturbing. A darker portrait comes in with the chimney sweeper, where we get this portrait in the child's voice. Again, this is all the child's perspective, and here you get in the child's voice the story. It is a story, essentially, of a young boy who, his mother dies, very sad, and his father sold him, while yet my tongue could scarcely cry. A young child who is essentially indentured to a chimney sweep, and that child, being small, can crawl through chimneys in London to clean them. Horrible in every imagining, but it was a practice. And here Blake is giving voice to that little child. And he finds an element of beauty within that even. He paints this, his friend Tom, who cried when his head that curled like a lamb's back was shaved, another lamb. Not losing sight of that. He's hush, Tom, never mind it, for when your head's bare, you know the soot cannot spoil your white hair. And so he was quiet, and that very night, as Tom was a-sleeping, he had such a sight that thousands of sweepers, Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all of them locked up in coffins in black. And by came an angel who had a bright key, and he opened the coffins and set them all free. He has a vision in a dream, and Blake likes his visions. Visions, however, dreams are all, they're deeply irrational. They are not enlightenment. They are a kind of dark Freudian background to your thoughts that civilized, cultured people ignore or suppress or don't give any weight to whatsoever. But Blake sees the vision and the dream as the pathway to something more important, more significant. So he's tossing that out there. And then here he says, and so Tom awoke and we rose in the dark. Now, significantly also in that dream, it is an angel coming and setting them free from their life of, their miserable lives. And the angel told Tom if he'd be a good boy, he'd have God for his father and never want joy. You have to believe in something in your mind, and then you can find happiness. And so Tom awoke, and we rose in the dark and got on our bags and brushes to work. Though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm. So if all do their duty, they need not fear harm, because they have this belief in their hearts. They have hope, and they have something to go on. They're somewhat impervious to the suffering that they and everybody around them are feeling. The hope comes through. The emotionalism of it, the irrational, childlike belief that, well, something's looking out for me. That's quite touching. But that vision is very much childish. We're reading this and we're saying, oh yeah, it seems a little naive. It seems a little silly. Well, it's supposed to be naive. It's the perspective of a child. And so the next step in that is to flip over to songs of experience. And here you get a very different perspective indeed. In the introduction, remember the introduction, the piper piping bright and all that, so hopeful, so childlike, about the fashioning of a poet. Here, in the introduction to Songs of Experience, you get, hear the voice of the bard, who present, past, and future sees, whose ears have heard the holy word that walked among the ancient trees, calling the lapsed soul and weeping in the evening dew, that might control the starry pole and fallen light renew. Now it's no longer the simple rural pen. This is a different vision of poetry, a different responsibility of poetry, which is it's the high prophet. It's the poet as the denouncer of evil, the savior, if you will. Hear the voice of the bard, who present, past, and future sees. Sees, he's a visionary. He can see the future? That's a visionary. Not somebody that the Enlightenment is going to pay any attention to, but he is saying that, well, okay, no, poets have access to secret truths in the world, to a way of being, a way of thinking, a way of feeling that makes them prophets, that makes them shamans, that makes them the venerable religious figures that the culture at large so desperately needs, in his view. It is a very different view of the role of the poet as announced in the Songs of Innocence. It's somewhat more apocalyptic. The lamb in the Songs of Innocence becomes the tiger in Songs of Experience. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye can frame their fearful symmetry? This is about the creation of the tiger, who is a somewhat frightening creature. Burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? Whereas the lamb in the Innocence poem was, a little lamb who made thee. And it's so innocent and excited and hopeful. And here it's imagining the power that would create a tiger. A tiger is a predator. Perhaps an apex predator. It is deadly. It is perhaps evil. In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize with the fire? We're getting, again, a kind of frightening God. A notion of religion, or a God at least, that is not cuddly, that is much more evil. Why would he do this? Why would he create a tiger who is so deadly? Why would he create evil in the world? These are questions, and these little portraits and little doubts start to sink in. Whereas you had in Songs of Innocence some very uncertain characterizations of within some threatening notes, some dark notes within the portrait of childhood. Here, it's coming from a more objective, more denunciatory, more embittered source. There's another version of the chimney sweeper. Remember how hopeful they were? Now the chimney sweeper, a little black thing among the snow, crying, "Weep, weep," in notes of woe. Where are thy father and mother? Where are thy father and mother? Say, they are both gone to church to pray. Well, instead of taking care of their child, they're off in the church praying. For all the love of spirituality that Blake has, he was no fan of organized religion at all. And so the church is not religion in his perspective. Because I was happy upon the heath and smiled among the winter snow, they clothed me in the clothes of death and taught me to sing the notes of woe. So again, you get this sense of something lost in childhood. This child is reporting these things and saying that, well, yeah, I was happy upon the heath. When I was younger, I was happy. Now I am being made to wear perhaps adult clothing, symbolically, and I am less happy. I have lost something. It's painful. And because I am happy and dance and sing, they think that they have done me no injury, and are gone to praise God and his priest and king, who make up a heaven of our misery. God, priest, king. The priest and the king, he has no patience for. The image of God is a difficult one for him to grapple with. But again, you get that sense of, well, the parents are off doing their devotions and their worship to something while he himself is suffering. This dark image of religion and of life in general just comes through, and you don't have much of a sense of hope in the Songs of Experience that are so prominent in Songs of Innocence. The Holy Thursday version. Is this a holy thing to see in a rich and fruitful land, babes reduced to misery, fed with cold and usurious hand? Is that trembling cry a song? Can it be a song of joy? And so many children poor, it is a land of poverty. And their sun does never shine, and their fields are bleak and bare, and their ways are filled with thorns. It is eternal winter there. For wherever the sun does shine, and wherever the rain does fall, babe can never hunger there, nor poverty the mind appall. Again, a flip side of the Song of Innocence, made very dark, and you're getting this sense of it's a humanity that has gone tragically wrong. It has veered off a true path, let's say, that Blake sees, and so he starts cataloging all of the ills around him, the ills of his culture, and this can be quite dramatic. Some of his best are just portraits of the time. London. I wandered through each chartered street near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark on every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind-forged manacles I hear How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But most through midnight streets I hear, how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn infant's tear, and blights with plagues the marriage hearse. This is a portrait of London. He was a lifelong Londoner. He lived out of town for a little bit when he was an adult, but he was very much a London boy, born and bred. And you see some of the indicative points of Romanticism here as it swings away from Enlightenment. The Enlightenment gave way to the Industrial Revolution, and with that, the cities swelled. So when he was talking about a rural pen, he was imagining something as a city boy. He was imagining a kind of idyllic past that just was completely ebbing away from England as a whole, certainly in London. He wanders through each chartered street where the chartered Thames does flow. Everybody's making money. This is about how people have, this is about commerce. This is about commercializing what is supposed to be shared avenues where people can come together, the streets and the rivers. I mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe, more pain and suffering that he sees, but perhaps nobody else does because they're so consumed with, the Industrial Revolution. We're all making so much money. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every man, the mind-forged manacles I hear. Manacles. He feels that people are in change, people aren't free like they used to. He's calling for more freedom, more liberty in the good old English sense. But he sees that civilization is crimping that. We have another chimney sweep. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. A couple of things here. One, blood on the palace walls. Again, I said before, he is no friend of the crown. He does not like kings. He does not like the Pope. He does not like anybody who exploits the system and lives higher than anybody else, quite frankly. But also chimney sweepers, and this is something that he comes back to again and again. But chimney sweep is a sign of some industrialization, not just the home and the hearth, but he sees that the industrialization of England, which has been going on, and creating huge clouds of smoke and pollution and just filth everywhere. They had really no sanitation in London at the time. And so he is seeing this as a stain on the London that he loves, and it is just getting worse because people have lost their way. And also in that last stanza, but most through midnight streets I hear, how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn infant's tear and blights with plagues the marriage hearse. Now this is about, a father contacts syphilis or something from a prostitute and brings it home to the wife, and then the wife is perhaps pregnant, and the child is born blind, and stories like that are all over the place. But significantly, again, the damage here that is registered is to the child, and children are everything in Romanticism, and they held a very special place in Blake. He's always trying to voice protection for the children and sees them as innocents that need to be protected. He has very little time for the things of adults, for the sophistication. And you can see that in his attacks on Voltaire and Rousseau. mock on, Voltaire, Rousseau, mock on, 'tis all in vain. You throw the sand against the wind, and the wind blows it back again. Everything they do is nullified and pointless in the face of nature. Nature is predominant. The wind, nature, just laughs at their attempts to do anything. And every sand becomes a gem reflected in the beams divine. Blown back they bind the mocking eye, but still in Israel's path they shine. The atoms of Democritus and Newton's particles of light are sands upon the Red Sea shore, where Israel's tents do shine so bright. This is Israel. The view, his view is that there is a spirituality connected to the Christianity, yes, but also through an older tradition. He's very much looking for a more ancient spirituality, a more authentic spirituality that he ties to here Israel, and saying that, well, Voltaire and Rousseau, yeah, they have these thoughts and deism, and they're just tossing ideas around, and it's all stupid because it means nothing in the face of nature, and it means nothing because, well, sands upon the Red Sea shore where Israel's tents do shine so bright. The spirit of spirituality, the spirit of true religion, the spirit of a primordial almost God that lives outside the realm of reason. They can't do anything in the face of that. We see this connection in "and did those feet. And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountains green? And was the holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pasture seen? And did the countenance divine shine forth upon our clouded hills? And was Jerusalem builded there among those dark satanic mills? Bring me my bow of burning gold, bring me my arrows of desire. Bring me my spear, O clouds unfold, bring me my chariot of fire. I will not cease from mental flight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. You see all of those familiar elements in there. The lamb. You see the high bard, prophet pose. You see this activism. You see the concern with Jerusalem. You see the condemnation of industrialism in dark satanic mills. You see all of this get bounded up, and it is it's a clarion call. It's a call to arms. It's what it is. Bring me my bow of burning gold. Bring me my arrows of desire. These are weapons. He is calling for weapons. He is demanding that he is offering, let's say, to lead a revolution in culture that will inspire and not just reason with people. He wants to build Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. He wants to bring spirituality home, not polite hymns sung in St. Paul's Cathedral, but an old-time religion that is inspiring, that is built on emotion, on spiritualism, on visions, and the visions of the prophets. He wants all of this. That's not just so polite. That's not just so dry. That's not just so pleasant in his somewhat pejorative term. He wants to bring all of this back, as the Romantic era did. Bring all of that spiritualism back and all of those old-time sensations that inspire. That's what Romanticism offers. That signals the death knell of the Enlightenment. And Blake does that.